A quiet suburban street in Plano, Texas, turned into something that looked less like a neighborhood and more like a live courtroom. It was a Saturday morning. The kind of morning where families mow their lawns, kids ride their bikes, and neighbors wave from their driveways. But that peace didn't last. Reginald Carter, a homeowner on the block, stepped out of his two-story brick house with nothing on his mind but taking the trash to the curb. He didn't even make it 10 steps before he froze. At the edge of his driveway stood three figures. Two men wearing black tactical vests with patches stitched across their chest, patches that read community enforcement. And between them stood Linda Whitfield, the president of the Homeowners Association. Linda wasn't smiling, neither were the men. To an untrained neighbor glancing through the blinds, the trio might have looked official, but to Reginald, something was off. The vests didn't match. One hung loose with Velcro straps dangling, the other stretched too tight. Their boots were worn and scuffed, more flea market than government issue, and the way they stood too stiff to rehearse set off alarms in his head. Linda spoke first, her voice sharp, like she'd been rehearsing this confrontation. "Mr. Carter, we need to talk." Reginald set the trash bag down and calmly rested his hands on his hips. "About what?" That's when one of the men stepped forward, tall, pale, with a shaved head and mirrored sunglasses that made it impossible to read his eyes. His voice was flat. "Community enforcement. You're in violation of neighborhood regulations. We're here to detain you until police arrive." The words dropped like a rock. "Detain me," Reginald repeated, his tone low, almost amused. Linda folded her arms tightly. "You've ignored notices, and this has gone too far. We can't have someone undermining our community rules. These men are here to make sure you comply." Reginald's eyebrow lifted. He looked from Linda to the so-called officers. "And what exactly are the charges?" The second man, shorter, broad-shouldered, with a messy beard, pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his vest. "Property violations, non-compliance with HOA orders, unauthorized driveway modifications, loud gatherings. The list goes on." Reginald almost laughed. "So you think that gives you the right to walk onto my property? And what did you call it?" "Detain me." The taller man's jaw tightened. "That's right. You can come peacefully, or we'll make it harder on you." The neighborhood seemed to pause. Curtains shifted. Someone was already watching, maybe recording. Reginald took a step forward, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Let me explain something to you. There is no such thing as community enforcement. You're not law enforcement. You have no authority here. And right now you're trespassing." Linda's face flushed. "Don't talk to me about authority, Reginald. You think you're above the rules because of who you are. We've had complaints, real complaints, and I won't let this neighborhood fall apart." The bearded man shifted nervously, but the tall one stayed rigid, his hand hovering near his belt, as if daring Reginald to believe he was armed. Reginald tilted his head. He'd seen this type before, wannabes who thought a vest and a stern face made them untouchable. But what they didn't know was that Reginald Carter wasn't just a homeowner, he was a federal agent, trained to dismantle networks far more dangerous than these imposters. And in that moment, standing calm in his driveway, he knew one thing for sure: they had picked the wrong man. Eddie's hands trembled, the cuffs rattling against his thigh. For the first time, his swagger cracked, and Reginald saw the frightened man hiding behind the mirrored shades. "Think carefully," Reginald said, his voice low, almost intimate. "Linda won't be there when the police start asking questions. She won't sit beside you in court. She won't do your time. She'll save herself, and you'll be the one wearing real cuffs." The crowd fell silent, every ear straining. Eddie's bravado broke. The cuff slipped from his hand, clattering against the pavement, echoing louder than Linda's shrill protest. "No," Linda shouted, stomping her foot like a child denied candy. "Pick them up. Don't let him win." But Eddie didn't move. He stepped back, chest heaving, regret carving deep lines into his face. Reginald seized the moment, straightening to his full height, his eyes locked on Linda. "Leadership isn't about control, Linda. It's about responsibility. And you've failed yours." The neighbors erupted, not applause, but voices rising in unison. "He's right. She's gone too far. We don't want this anymore." Linda's face drained of color as the power she once wielded slipped like sand through her fingers. Reginald bent down, picked up the cuffs, and held them high. The steel gleamed in the sunlight. "This is what happens when you confuse control with justice. When you mistake fear for respect." But this, he shook the cuffs. "This is fraud." The crowd leaned in, but before the lesson could land, Eddie made a reckless move. Pride wouldn't let him walk away. He lunged, shoving past Sean, reaching for Reginald's wrist. Gasps exploded. Phones tilted. "Don't touch him," someone shouted in a blur. Reginald moved. Training took over. He sidestepped, twisted Eddie's arm behind his back, and snapped the same cuffs onto Eddie's wrists in less than 3 seconds. Eddie cried out shock. Not Panan fell to his knees. The crowd roared. "Did you see that?" He didn't even fight back. Reginald stayed calm, holding Eddie with minimal force. His voice was steady, professional. "You're done. Don't resist. It'll only make it worse." Linda's face contorted in horror. "You can't arrest him." Reginald's eyes cut to her, sharp as glass. "You're right. I can't, but I can detain him for impersonating an officer until the real police arrive. And considering he just assaulted me on my own property. His tone hardened. The charges keep stacking. The neighbors erupted again. Some clapped, others shouted, this time at Linda. You set this up. You pushed them too far. This is on you. Sean's voice cracked. He stripped off his vest, hands raised. I'm out. I didn't sign up for this. He turned to Linda. Lady, you never told us he was law enforcement. Reginald's reply cut through the chaos. That's because she didn't know. Confusion rippled. Linda blinked. What are you talking about? Reginald pulled a worn leather wallet from his pocket, flipping it open with practiced ease. The gold badge glinted in the sun. I'm Special Agent Reginald Carter, he said, his voice carrying Federal Bureau of Investigation. The street went still. Leaves rustled. Eddie panted on the pavement. Dozens of phones zoomed in on the badge, the cuffs, Linda's pale face. You came onto my property with imposters, Linda. You endangered your own neighbors. You thought intimidation gave you power, but you didn't do your homework. You had no idea who you were dealing with. Her voice cracked. This is abuse of power. Reginald's words landed like steel. Abuse of power. Coming from a woman who staged a fake arrest over an HOA dispute. What I'm doing is lawful. What you did is criminal. The crowd murmured in disgust. Phones rolled, capturing every second. And then the sound of sirens. Real police. Red and blue lights flooded the street. Squad cars pulled up, tires crunching against asphalt. Officers stepped out, hands near their belts, hands where we can see them. One barked. Reginald calmly raised one hand, still holding Eddie in restraint with the other. Officers, I'm Special Agent Reginald Carter, FBI. Badge in my pocket. Identification ready. The man in my custody attempted to impersonate law enforcement and assaulted me on my property. One officer studied his credentials, then nodded with respect. All right, you're good. We'll take him from here. The crowd buzzed as Eddie was lifted to his feet and walked toward the squad car. Phones zoomed tighter. Linda shouted desperately, her voice breaking. He's twisting everything. You have to believe me. But the officers turned to her with hard eyes. Ma'am, we have multiple witnesses and from what we see, this looks very bad for you. Did you authorize these men to act as law enforcement? Her mouth opened. No words came. The crowd shouted. She brought them here. She told them to arrest him. The officer's tone hardened. Ma'am, step aside. If you continue to interfere, we'll treat this as obstruction. Linda's shoulders sagged. The title she clung to, HOA president, meant nothing now. Under flashing lights, she was just another suspect. Phones kept rolling as officers led Eddie and Linda away. Reginald turned to the neighbors, his voice carrying steady and clear. This isn't about lawn height or driveways. It's about people pretending to have authority they don't. People who think fear is leadership. That ends today. The crowd clapped, murmured, whispered to their children. Linda shouted one last desperate plea. People like you don't belong in neighborhoods like this. The neighbors recoiled. That's enough, Linda. We all heard you. You've lost every ounce of respect. Reginald didn't gloat. He only looked at her with quiet disappointment. You just told everyone exactly who you are, and that will outlast anything I could ever say. The flashing lights faded as squad cars pulled away, but the damage was done. The block would never forget what it saw that day, but because sometimes the fight for justice doesn't happen in courtrooms. It happens in driveways, in front of neighbors, in the place you call home. And the lesson was clear. Real power doesn't come from fear. It comes from truth.